name's Kevin Steen. You're watching The Gorilla Report. Subscribe to his YouTube. What is it? YouTube channel? Is that how you say it? I don't know. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, or I will sign a live full-grown gorilla to your house. Do we have full-grown gorillas?
Yeah, we can get them right.
Figure it out?
Yeah.
I got zoo connections.
Yeah, he has.
Subscribe.
Welcome guys to the season finale of The Gorilla Report. My name is Ollie Harper and we are back for the final edition of The Gorilla Report for this year, for this season. This is the one to wrap up 2013. After this, I'm going on a Christmas break, and hopefully in the new year we will be back with more professional wrestling interviews for you guys to enjoy whenever we can get them out, because let's just say hopefully we've got some few little big things planned in the new year. I know you guys are currently knowing about the Females of the Squared Circle series. Already got 2 names confirmed. Hopefully we're going to be bringing a few more of those as well. But talking about tonight's show, of course, tonight we have got a big interview to wrap up the season. Joining me on the show tonight, if you don't know already, I'm going to tell you now. Joining me on the show tonight is a former WWE, former WWF. This gentleman has worked all over the world. He has worked for promotions like Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He has worked for ECW and currently working in TNA Wrestling, Impact Wrestling as an agent. Joining me on the show tonight for a full 50-minute interview, uncut, uncensored. Joining me on the show tonight is none other than Al Snow. That is right, Al Snow is joining me on the show over Skype. We're doing it over Skype, like only we can here on the Gorilla Report, for this in-depth interview. Now, I just want to tell you guys now, most of the interviews we have done on here in the past mainly will focus on, you know, the guy's career, what he's done in the business, all that type of deal. Well, this interview is very much, it does that, but when I watched it back the other night, when I was putting this together, I actually looked at it and I thought, you know what, this is actually a great way to actually, if you're just a fan that wants to like learn a little bit more about the business, this interview really does do that. I think it really does hit those points. You know, he talks about things in the business in terms of what he sees in younger guys and what he, you know, he will tell younger guys when they're going out to perform on TV. You're going to listen to it, you're going to see it, but you know, it's very much a good little learning lesson for anybody that wants to go into the professional wrestling business. You guys are going to really enjoy it. So that's coming up next, and I just want to announce now, coming on New Year's Day, that's right, New Year's Day, we are back, because you know what we're doing on New Year's Day? We're having a party. We're having a bit of a, let's say we're having a bit of a Von Dutch, a Leah Von Dutch party. That's right, Leah Von Dutch, the first edition of Females of the Squared Circle on New Year's Day with Leah Von Dutch. Check this out.
The Flying Dutchman, Dutch Clutch, KKLM, KKLM. Leah Von Dutch, Leah Von Dutch, Leah Von Dutch. The Flying Dutchman, Dutch Clutch, KKLM, KKLM. Leah Von Dutch.
What does everybody want? What does everybody need? What does everybody love?
What's up, everyone? This is Elise, the Huntress, and you're watching The Gorilla Report.
Right guys, we are now back on The Gorilla Report. It's the season finale and we have decided to go out with a bang for the end of 2013. I am joined by my final guest of Season 2 of The Gorilla Report. This gentleman is a veteran in the world of professional wrestling, a former WWE, WWF, a former ECW wrestling star, currently in TNA Wrestling as an agent. This man has been all over the world. Of course, also a former Tough Enough trainer. This man has seen everything in the world of professional wrestling. I am joined by none other than Al Snow. Welcome to the Gorilla Report. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you very much for having me, Ollie.
Not a problem, not a problem. I just want to say the pleasure is all mine. I'm very much humbled that you took the time out of your day for coming on the show. And let's start this interview. So, your early growing up. How was early growing up for you, Al?
Just a typical, middle class childhood.
Yeah.
Blue collar, just
Yeah.
very simple, very straightforward. I'm the only one of the family that ran away with the circus. So
the one that got away, of course. Fantastic. So let's talk about your early discovery of professional wrestling then. What age were you when it was something that was very much becoming a discovery and something that you were starting to become very fond of?
I was probably around 5 or 6, and I was in Ohio, and here in the United States. At that time, there were regional territories, and Ed Farhat, the original Sheik, controlled Ohio, and we got his TV and his wrestling shows, and that's where I started falling in love with it.
Fantastic. So, and the age when it was something of more of you were wanting to actually do this for a job, what age was this?
Well, I was 13.
Yeah.
The Sheik's territory had come and gone, and we started getting cable television around that time in the late 70s, and got TBS, and we got Georgia Championship Wrestling, and it started all over again.
Georgia Championship Wrestling, absolute legendary promotion right there. Like I say, so let's say touching on your early training. So your early training into the business, I really want to talk about this. So talk me through some of the times your early training getting into the business then.
Well, I heard I went to a convention this past Saturday, and they had a lot of older wrestlers there.
Okay.
And they had Axe and Smash of Demolition, Barry Darsow, and Bill Eadie, and they were discussing, the difference between now and then as far as training.
Sure.
And one of the biggest differences is that, we were taught to wrestle first, and then to entertain. Now they're just taught to entertain.
So, okay. So, in terms of one thing I want to actually ask you, what kind of advice? Obviously, I've got quite a few guys that do watch this show that are getting into the business. They're in academies. They're working up and down the United Kingdom. They're trying to get noticed. They're trying to get their foot in the door. What kind of advice would you give to these guys that are just starting out for the very first time?
Well, the advice I would give them is to, endeavor to stand out, to endeavor to be an attraction, to endeavor to be the guy that motivates people to come, fill the building. Don't focus on how good your match is. Okay? Don't focus on that. Focus on how many people paid to see your match. Yeah. Don't try to be Savage and Steamboat, which is what everybody else in the locker room is trying to do. Try to be Hogan and Andre. Because so few people these days try to be that.
I think that is absolutely golden advice from a veteran like yourself. I think that is absolutely fantastic to anybody that is getting into the business. I think that's a very good lesson right there in terms of try and compare to be the best. Hogan, Andre, such a larger than life thing right there, and to be to get yourself on that sort of track would be the best way forward, is what you're saying. So then, let's talk about, another thing I want to talk about, of course, is Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Let's say, how was getting into Smoky Mountain Wrestling for you?
I was very lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah.
At the time, I was working for Paul Heyman with ECW on my initial run. And, Jim Cornette, who I had known for years, and he never had a spot for me, had contacted me because Eddie Gilbert had left.
Yeah.
And wanted to book Puerto Rico. Yeah. And he needed a guy that could talk. He didn't know that I could talk until he saw me in the corner of Dan Severn for the first UFC fight that Dan competed in. Yeah. And then heard me make some smart alecky comments to the interviewer, and then that was all it took. So.
Yeah. And so, do you say, touching on ECW, your experience with Mr. Paul Heyman, how was Paul Heyman for you?
Paul's a great guy. I mean, he does what he has to do to survive and to help his company, ECW at that time, thrive. I mean, he did what he needed to do. And and I'm sure a lot of other guys don't necessarily agree with what he did, but it is what it is. He gave a lot of talent, a lot of opportunities that then led to long, lengthy careers that otherwise those talent, including myself, may not have had.
Sure, definitely. Now, another thing, of course, in ECW, one of the big things, the head gimmick. Now, of course, a gimmick that I know a lot of people, a lot of wrestling fans will very much know you for is the head gimmick. Would you be able to tell the viewers the story of the whole head gimmick, its life? How was it born?
I went back to ECW kind of on loan from WWF at the time.
Okay.
And I was very frustrated. So much so that, I was trying to come across like I had suffered a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Tried a bunch of different things. Started reading a book on abnormal psychology on a case study of a woman who had paranoid schizophrenia with like a transference disorder, meaning she transferred the sickness onto the things that she heard the voices from, thinking that they were ill, not her. And I found a styrofoam head just by chance in the back, and thought, well, you know what, I'm going to carry this to the ring, and I'm going to treat the head as if it's sick and I'm normal, and talk to them. And if it worked, for the grace of God, it worked. It connected.
It did. And I know there's actually the video on YouTube, I believe, if you want to check it out. There's a video, I believe, where you're in the ring and the whole of this ECW crowd have got head mannequins and they are moshing them. It's like a rock concert. It was absolutely phenomenal. What was your thoughts when you knew that this gimmick that you just brought in was getting so over so quickly?
I don't think at the time that I really, unfortunately, like now, considering the experience since then, I would be more aware, and I would be more connected with it, and I would understand it better. Yeah. And at the time, I didn't enough and didn't properly to where I could fully capitalize or take advantage of it.
Sure. It's kind of something that you were very much at the time very new to, so it was kind of like what you were getting was, wow, it's all happening. Would you say it was was it happening too fast, or
No, and I'd had success in other promotions years ago. I'd been working at that time for probably 15, 16 years. It just you don't have. I didn't have anybody there for guidance. You need somebody to kind of be on the outside looking in, so that they can help you fill in the blanks sometimes. Sure. And you've got to be smart enough to listen to them too.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, with a lot of these younger guys that are getting into the business, I mean, what kind of course, currently, of course, working in TNA wrestling as an agent, and you get these young guys that are coming in, what kind of things do you say to these guys that are coming in, that are, fresh guys, from, of course, former territory working with TNA, OVW, but also just, what kind of advice, what kind of things do you give to these young guys coming in?
I tell them all the same thing, that what you're about to perform is not a wrestling match. It's a commercial. Yeah. You're a product. It's an opportunity for you to sell yourself on a bigger stage than what you've had before. So go out there and understand that everything that's done with you is an investment of time and money. And this is probably the greatest investment in your career right now that you'll ever have. Because for TNA, let's say it's $50,000 for a 30-second commercial. Well, they're going to give you a 6-minute match. That's a 6-minute commercial at $50,000 for every 30 seconds.
Sure.
So that's a lot of money. Do you think they give two shits how great your match is, or do you think they care more about you selling more tickets than what they just put into it?
Absolutely. Very much a belief, of course, right there with what's going to make money. Of course, don't get me wrong, you've got to have great wrestling. Of course, that's what everyone's getting into the business for. But
see, that's you have to understand, and that's something that everybody these days goes, well, you have to have great wrestling. Okay. You have to have great wrestling. Oh my God, it's all about the work rate. It's all about the work rate. Well, let me inform you. First off, Nobody knows what a work rate is. Everybody uses that term these days, and they have no clue what the hell work rate is. Work rate is not your ability to perform a series of moves put together, which are called high spots, and it's not, your work rate is not you being able to put on holds and things like that. A work rate is your ability to suck the audience in and to believe that it's an actual competitive situation that they're watching so that they can get emotionally involved. That's what work rate is. It's not your ability to perform a physical flip. And the focus on the so-called work rate and the excellent wrestling is what's leading to the demise of the wrestling business. The Ultimate Warrior was not a terrific wrestler. He was horrible. But he was an amazing draw. And if more of these guys would focus on trying to be an attraction and drawing money, maybe, just maybe, the wrestling business wouldn't be so much on its ass. We now have more physical and athletic ability in the wrestling business we've ever had in the history of its existence. And the wrestling business all over the world is more on its ass than it ever has been. Meaning there are fewer places for wrestlers to go make a living. Because everybody wants to be a wrestler, nobody wants to be a worker and make money.
Sure. I say I think that's a brilliant way to describe it. I mean, for anybody like myself, obviously taught me a very good lesson right there to everybody else that has had that confusion. I mean, let's look at a guy like John Cena. John Cena to you.
He's terrific. I think he's, thank God for John Cena. I mean, what would, right now, tell me somebody that's a bigger draw or a bigger attraction,
That's right.
in the wrestling business.
Indeed. I mean, I was...
Vince is not, listen, understand this. Vince is not stupid. Not to mention, Vince has years upon years of experience. That's something that's invaluable. And do you honestly think that Vince is going to invest the time, the god-awful amounts of money, and the effort into someone that, and then have them main event WrestleMania, an event that they probably this last year made over $150 million in a week off one event, and he's just going to put the guy in there because he likes him?
Absolutely not.
It's absurd.
Wants to get him in there. He's a box office draw. He's proven it time and time again.
Quite apparently, yes.
Indeed. I mean, it's absolutely apparent. I mean, it's quite ironic, of course. The other night I was saying I attended a William Regal audience, and Regal very much set the same style on the same format with John Cena. John Cena is a guy that is making a lot of money, of course, and this guy is going, I think, he's going to be above and beyond what a guy does. He's doing all of the charity work. He's an ambassador for, of course, the Make-A-Wish.
Because it all works to help him to continue to be an attraction and draw an audience.
Indeed it does. Okay, so let's say that touching off course, moving on back onto your career itself then. So the WWF, the early WWF, of course. Let's talk about your first time getting into the World Wrestling Federation. We've got to just give me a bit of a thing on how this was for you.
Well, I came in under a character or gimmick of Avatar, and it was at a point in time, it was in late '95, that Power Rangers and several other type shows like that were very popular here in the United States, and Vince wanted to try to capitalize on them and wanted to create a character that took off on that. I was given an opportunity when I went out there, and I didn't perform it properly, and it kind of floundered and didn't go anywhere, and I became frustrated, and then I was given another opportunity with the New Rockers, but unfortunately Marty didn't really want to put his heart into it, and I don't blame him. I mean, it was kind of a taking what he and Sean had done and belittling a little bit, I guess, and that went nowhere. So I ended up being frustrated again after it had its run.
Yeah, of course.
And then I was put on loan to ECW.
Yeah, and really, like you were saying, that was very much the place where you were able to kind of go in, find your niche with, what was working in terms of the fans, what they were reacting to, of course, the head gimmick, which became such a popular deal, like we were just saying. So, Okay, another thing I want to ask you is about, I want to talk about hardcore wrestling. Of course, now, of course, you were involved in, of course, in the Attitude Era. Of course, you were a former hardcore champion in the Attitude Era. Hardcore wrestling, your thoughts on it? Of course, you were involved in hardcore matches. What the style of hardcore wrestling? What can you say as, what's your thoughts on the hardcore style?
It's just another vehicle to tell a story.
Yeah.
You've got, instead of using wrestling moves, you're doing a lot of brawling, and hardcore wrestling has been around ever since the inception of the wrestling business.
Yeah.
And it's a big misnomer that all of a sudden somebody created this idea. They were gimmick matches, street fight matches, anything goes, lights out matches, Texas bull rope, chain match, dog collar match. They were all precursors to hardcore wrestling. I mean, right. Memphis was really probably a precursor. The Memphis territory was probably a precursor to groups like ECW. Yeah. But the thing that a lot of guys don't understand is that they use the weapons and the items and things like that. They just use them just to use them to get people to make noise, and they don't use them in the context of it's still a match that you're trying to win. Yeah. And you end up using those weapons to try to beat your opponent. Yeah. They just use them to use them, Yeah. And they think that the more ridiculous and more dangerous these things are, that it will then, get people more emotionally involved, when all it does is it just gets them to make just more noise. That's all.
Of course. Another thing, of course, with hardcore wrestling is also very much wasn't of course seen in the 90s, but of course another thing I believe in Nigel McGuinness, a guy who did a Kickstart. He talking about blood in professional wrestling. What are your thoughts on the discoveries of what going on with blood in wrestling, blade jobs? You ran in a time where blade jobs were quite the necessity. What is your thoughts on the blade jobs and blood in wrestling?
Blood can, if it's used at the right time for the right reason, draw money. Yeah. It helps to add drama and consequence to a story, and it can very easily take it another step up. But to just use it, it's it's no different than doing a double, doing a moonsault or doing a dive to the floor just to do it because you can do it. Yeah. Or it's no different than, in a hardcore match hitting somebody with a stick or a trash can lid just to do it. Or putting somebody through a table just to do it. Yeah, great, you did it. But everything that's done in the ring, in the body of a wrestling match, should be done to tell a story. Wrestling moves, whether it be blading, taking a bump, doing a dive, doing a high spot, every one of those things are nothing more than letters that you string together to create sentences that are strung together to create letters that create words, words that create sentences, sentences that create paragraphs, and paragraphs that create chapters to tell a story based on a character who is trying to win and not lose.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another thing I want to actually ask you, it's quite a thing I'm asking you now, but of course a lot of the matches that you were having, these hardcore matches in the 99 period when you were feuding with the likes of the Big Boss Man, Road Dogg, Jesse James. So some of these backstage areas that you were going to, like these bars and stuff. I believe one of them as being SummerSlam 99. I remember you and the Big Boss Man ended up where you took this match was to a local bar. Was that kind of had the WWF, was the WWF like a very big payoff to these locations, or to have?
I don't know. Oh. I couldn't tell you. I wasn't involved in that part of it. Okay. I just that kind of started by accident. Okay. With Road Dogg and I when we had the one match on TV in Worcester, Massachusetts, when we went fighting through the back, and then we literally, quite honestly, accidentally went out the side door. And it was snowing outside, and it just, they loved it. So that kind of became, my thing of going in, crazy places. And then they started adopting it just as in general that the fight could end up anywhere.
Sure. And another thing, of course, in '99, I want to talk about, of course, the Job Squad gimmick, and another thing, of course, where you have the likes of Hardcore Holly in there, yourself. Let's talk about the Job Squad. The idea, where did this all come into play?
It was a joke.
Okay.
Honestly, it was a joke that I had made, sitting and catering when I was originally there, because there are a lot of people that don't know, sadly. There's only one thing that's fake in professional wrestling. The only thing that's ever been fake. It's the only thing that still is fake, and that's just the finish, just the outcome. Is the only thing that's fake. That's it. You don't really win, and you don't really lose. So, a lot of people were believing that they won for real, and I think it was 97, maybe 96. They had a lot of gangs,
yeah.
They had this angle that they had a lot of gangs. So I, sat there loud enough for everybody to hear me that I was going to create my own gang. We were going to call it the Job Squad. And a lot of people don't know what a jobber is. They think they do, and they misuse the term like they misuse all the terms in wrestling today, that they really think that they are smart to the business, but they're not. A jobber was a guy that was working the territory, that didn't go out on the live events, and that was literally just came into TV just to put another guy over. That was his sole purpose. We don't have jobbers anymore. They don't exist. Just because a guy gets beat doesn't mean he's a jobber. There are two different terms. So to clear that up. But I know how people love to think they know more than they actually do. The Job Squad on TV, Vince Russo wanted to use me as a vehicle to help get Scorpio and Bob Holly and give them a rub and get them over, and put us together that we were going to be the anti-superstars, the odd group out, the group of misfit toys, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the Job Squad was not. It was basically thumbing my nose at people.
Yeah. That
you don't really beat me. And you're not really winning. And that's why I said pin me, pay me, because I can give a shit less if I lose, who cares?
Exactly.
All I care about is if I get paid. And I don't have to. That's another big misnomer that people don't understand, that think that they do understand, is that you don't have to win to get over with the audience, to make the audience want to pay to see it. I can go down a list of guys that had horrible win-loss records. Tommy Dreamer is a prime example of a guy that never won a match in ECW and was a tremendous draw there. And actually, when they wanted him to finally win, he was arguing and didn't want to, because they never won. But in that case, and everybody who supposedly knows, I guess Tommy Dreamer was a jobber.
I mean, I think that's complete. I mean, anybody that would say that in such a context, consider that somebody like Tommy Dreamer.
But that's what everybody says. Zack Ryder's a jobber. Zack Ryder's, a talent on the main roster. That doesn't make him a jobber. And the fact that they use him to elevate other people means that he has value and is worth something, and therefore is not a jobber.
Indeed.
But, like I said, what do I know? I've only been doing it for next to 32 years, so.
If you listen to somebody like you, I think would be the best form of advice to anybody getting into this business. Would be very much now. Okay, so let's talk about another thing I want to talk about. Of course, a period that you were also in the World Wrestling Federation was around the time when Vince McMahon bought out WCW. What was the reaction backstage from your point of view, where you were, when you've got Shane McMahon, the simulcast? What was the reaction going around?
Just stunned, I guess. Everybody thought, you would eventually believe that, Vince is going to do something like that. It was a bit of wasn't really a surprise, but at the same time, it was like, wow, it did happen. It really did occur.
Yeah, definitely, very much. I remember reading in Matt and Jeff's book, Matt put it very well. It was like the alien meeting the president in terms of a reality check on how something that had been in such a war for so many years was all of a sudden snapped up in a heartbeat. Quite quite amazing. But also in 2001, of course, the tough enough, the concept of tough enough. How was the tough enough thing brought to you?
I was approached and, spoken to about doing it, and I could see the brilliance in it and the genius in it to be used as a kind of an infomercial for wrestling and a way to possibly grow the audience and bring people into the wrestling business and the wrestling show that otherwise would never have came if it hadn't been for that. And it did just exactly that. It was brilliant. I mean, so much brilliance that when Spike TV wanted to, have it, and WWF told them no, WWE told them no, they went to to UFC and the CEO of UFC, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Dana White had said himself that they completely ripped off Tough Enough, and that was the thing that really catapulted UFC. Was people can't relate physically to what happens both in the wrestling ring, and they can't physically relate to what happens in a UFC fight, but they can relate to the personalities and the characters. And that show, Ultimate Fighter, allowed the audience to connect with the fighters in a way they never had, and that's what caused the audience to grow.
I think I want to actually ask you about with the Tough Enough, with Tough Enough Season 1, of course, such a fresh animal that was brought to television in that year. No one had seen such a thing brought out at the time. With the contestants and the whole choosing of the guys, of course, you went through I believe it was at WWF, the former place, now Hard Rock Cafe in Times Square, New York, was where you were doing a lot of the auditioning and the casting. At the time with that, was it like, how many guys was it that you were going through that day?
I think in 2 days we went through 225,
okay,
and that was whittled down from God knows how many thousands.
Oh God. So, and with Tough Enough, and another thing also people always like to say about reality TV, with the Tough Enough series, was there anything going on in that house that was purely for the cameras, and there was a certain bit of a script going on? Was it all raw and real?
No, because at that time, you have to understand, there was only, I think Survivor might have started at that point too.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. But other than the concept of what we did, the only other thing that was close to it was Real World. Yeah. And at that time they didn't have scripted reality. Yeah. It was literally we had a camera on us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yeah. They would give us activities and things like that to socialize with together, hoping that things would occur. Yeah. And I remember them sitting there going, hoping that, a couple of the young guys and a couple of the young girls would hook up, and, there'd be drama, and, the kids were so worn out physically all the time that, they didn't want to do anything.
Of course. And, okay, with some of the guys that you were able to connect with in the show, one of the things that comes off the Tough Enough memory for me, I believe it was season 3, maybe it was season 2, season 3, and infamous, the whole Hardcore Holly beating down on Matt Capitelli, the reaction with that when it happened, talk me through.
What do you want to know?
I was just saying, with that,
It was wrong. It was, it was born out of a place, Bob was in a bad place at the time. He's a great guy. He's a wonderful person, but, it was a lot of they did the show in a way, the format was that I was supposed to be the nice guy when really I wasn't. And then they had, I was more like the juicer, the guy that would squeeze you constantly. Yeah. And then, you had the blenders. So you had Taz that was a blender. He'd come in, Bob Holland, and, Bill DeMott. And there became a competition between them as to who was more the blender. Yeah. And, it became a point because the guys in the locker room were all like, yeah, those kids need to pay their dues, blah, blah, be really hard on them. And so the guys that were the blenders had to go out of their way to impress the guys in the locker room, and it created a monster that ended up in a bad situation, with a pissed off Bob Holly who took it out on a poor guy named Matt Capitale.
Indeed.
And I was very bad about the whole situation. There was no justification or excuse for it. I don't care what anybody says.
Indeed. I think very, very much one of those things. You felt very bad for Matt at the time. It was all done very, just one of those, such a, like, my God, at the time I think it took a lot of the audience back with how it was done. I know Matt's spoken about it in a lot of more interviews, saying that, in a lot of ways with what happened, it was just something that he kind of ran off with, but going off topic, I know. So let's talk about Tough Enough, when it was brought back in 2011. Of course, you weren't brought in for the 2011 Tough Enough. You had Stone Cold Steve Austin host, you had the trainers, I believe you had Trish Stratus, you had Booker T. What was your thoughts on, well, it's only been brought back for the one season in 2011, they've not actually done another season. What was your thoughts of comparing the two?
I was thrilled. I mean, it's a smart idea. I think, again, I can't emphasize how much I think that it's a very positive thing as far as recruiting talent, as far as developing talent, as far as making a connection with an audience that may not be watching professional wrestling. I cannot tell you how many thousands of people came to me and, hey, women, especially, but men, I never watched wrestling, but I started watching Tough Enough, and now I watch wrestling. Or my wife never watches wrestling, but she loves Tough Enough. Or, it's a way to grow the audience and expose fans that already watch wrestling. It gives makes them earn a new respect for how much passion, work, and effort it takes to go into it. And for people who aren't fans, it allows them a doorway into it. So.
Absolutely. And then another thing also I want to talk about, also touching on, we jumped a bit above, but the new ECW. Now, of course, you've been around the original ECW. Of course, a place like we were saying, you found your niche there with the whole head gimmick. Very much became almost like a mosh pit where you got all the heads rocking. When it was brought back, what was your thoughts on the new ECW that Vince at the time was calling the gritty alternative from the SmackDowns and the Raws?
Well, I thought it was great. It was give the talent there an opportunity to have another stage to get out and on TV in front of an audience. It was the third show that you have to understand. There's only so much television real estate, on a typical show, and you've got X number of talent, and a lot of guys aren't going to get that opportunity to make themselves a draw unless they have another venue to do it. And that was very much a positive thing in that regard. As far as it being ECW, it wasn't going to be ECW because, for one, it was Vince's. And Vince is going to try to, Paul Heyman tried to appeal to a very niche audience. Very niche. That ultimately led to his demise because he had too small an audience to support too big a payroll. And Vince is going to try to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. As vast and as varied as he can possibly do. Think of it like a comic book movie. You have comic book fans who know the characters, the storylines, etc. You have to appeal to them to a certain degree. Because if you don't, you're going to get a tremendous amount of backlash. But you have to basically alter or reinvent the story a little bit so that it will then translate and appeal to people that don't read comic books, so that you can then make as much money as possible from the film. And he tried to do that with ECW, and I don't think the talent quite saw it as what it was, and I don't think that a lot of people listen to the niche audience that's vocal as opposed to the larger audience that really doesn't care.
Sure. Now, and another so talking also, of course, another thing I want to talk about also, of course, is your current work in TNA wrestling. So, the move to TNA, how did this come about for you, moving to TNA wrestling?
I was separated with WWE at a time, and an opportunity came up with TNA to come in as a agent, and I took advantage of it, and I enjoyed it very much.
Fantastic. Excellent. So, another thing actually I want to ask you about is the with TNA Gut Check. I know a lot of people also very much are going about saying, what of course, I don't believe that I've not been doing the good check for a good few months now. What was worked, what was real, and all that kind of deal with the good check?
All real.
Yeah.
You know, I would go out and I would scout for talent. I would bring them in. I would explain to them that it was a genuine opportunity, because it was, for them to go out on, you know, much better than a dark match or anything else, because they were an actual segment on the show and everybody was going to be watching.
Yeah.
This was their chance to sell themselves.
Yeah.
And then it was genuinely a vote. If you go back and you watch the tapes, there are a lot of times that I'm by myself, I'm sitting there and I'm shocked when Bruce Pritchard would say, "Oh, you're hired," or "Oh, you're not," and I'd be like, "What?"
Yeah.
Because I never expected that.
So, talking about this, I want to talk about Joey Ryan, because I know, of course, Joey Ryan was a guy who, of course, you had the match at Bound for Glory with. Tell me about this whole deal with the Joey Ryan scenario coming.
Joey Ryan did exactly what I tell everybody to do.
Okay.
He went for broke. He went out there. He made an impression. You know, he had a moment with Taz, because Taz instigated the moment.
Yeah.
And Joey didn't back down.
Yeah.
And Joey didn't worry about being liked or being popular. He worried about, doing what he thought was real at the time. And he did awesome. And as a result, he got hired.
Yeah.
And he was given an opportunity, and he was given a run.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. A lot of guys don't. A lot of people think they understand, and they don't, because of course they're not in it. Everybody has a run. A certain, sometimes you get an opportunity, and the run will last 6 months. Sometimes it'll last 6 weeks. Sometimes it lasts 6 years. Sometimes it lasts 16 years. That's based on a circumstantial and situational providence with each particular talent.
Yeah.
And Joey came in, he took advantage of it, did an awesome job for the period he had it, and, at the time that it ended, he couldn't, he didn't, or could not, or didn't understand to reinvent himself to then go off in another direction.
Sure.
But the time that he was there, he did fabulous.
Absolutely. I think very much one of the guys that very much did stand out. Very, very tremendous what he was doing with the whole. It got it was like a cheesy, like a 1970s porn star gimmick that he had going on, but very different. And again, like you say, with the whole what he was doing, his image, that everything very much did stand out. And I think what you're saying is very, very true in terms of that kind of thing is going to stand out if you're looking to be working for a recognized company like Impact Wrestling.
All we care about, all we're looking for is to see if you can be a draw.
Yeah.
If you want to know how good you are, watch, honestly, remove yourself and be as objective as possible. Put your match on YouTube or on the DVD player. Sit and watch it. Watch it as a fan. As a fan who knows nothing about wrestling. Ask yourself these questions. If you were flipping through the channels on TV, would you stop and watch those two guys in the ring? The answer is no. You're screwing up. Ask yourself the next question. If you did stop, would you keep watching? Ask yourself the next question. If it goes to commercial break, would you stay or would you turn away? What are they doing that's keeping you there? What are they doing that's making you not give a shit? If you stayed, would you tune in next week to see that guy again? If the answer is no, you're wrong. You're doing something wrong. If you tune in next week to see him, here's the most important question. This is why movie stars are held in much higher regard than TV stars. Is because I want to know, would you get up off your couch, go sit in an uncomfortable seat for 2.5 hours, and pay $35 or more a ticket to watch that guy?
Yeah.
The answer is no. Then we don't need you.
Definitely. It's to say very much.
But you're a great wrestler. You have a terrific work rate. You're awesome. The problem is nobody will pay to see you. And let me explain something to you. If you're going to a show this weekend and the building seats 1,000 people and there's 200 people in there to watch you, and they only paid $10 a ticket, and you think you deserve to be in TNA or WWE, you better smarten up. Because if you can't motivate the entire building of 1,000 people to pay to see you for $10 a ticket, what makes you think you can motivate 20,000 people to pay $35 and up? What are you not doing there that you all of a sudden magically are going to do in TNA or WWE? Because let me smarten you up. When the music ends, the pyro's stopped, and the bell rings, there is literally nothing different in your little company than there is in TNA or WWE, except for the exponentially greater amount of investment in the time to allow you to be out there in that ring.
Right, absolutely. Again, investment, a word I think very much known, of course. Audience investment into that character. You've got to be self-aware.
That's money.
Yeah.
How much do you think it costs to rent an arena? How much do you think it costs for all those fancy semi-trucks that sit out back of that arena that carry all the equipment? How much do you think it costs for everybody that drive those trucks, the insurance, the upkeep? How much do you think it costs for everybody that carry those stuff into the building? How much do you think it costs for everybody to set it up? How much do you think it costs for all the lighting rigs, all the lighting crew, all the sound crew, all the cameras, all the camera crew, the ring? Let's keep going. And how do you think they pay for all of that? Because you're a great wrestler? I don't think so.
It's about the amount of people that are investing into that product. They're buying their tickets, they're buying the merchandise, they're investing into the TV product, they're buying the pay-per-views. You know,
they're spending money.
Indeed. Absolutely. Now, saying okay, very much enjoying this interview. I think that where we're going with this, very much going very in depth into the professional wrestling world, and very much key into it. Another thing I want to do also with you today is I've done this with a few guests in the past. It's called word affiliation. I'm going to say a name of a wrestler, and you can give me the first sentence, first thing that comes to your head. Now, we're going to keep this on TNA. We're going to keep this on TNA today. Okay, right. The first one being, of course, I know recently signed, but of course, Derek Bateman, aka Ethan Carter III.
Tremendous potential.
Yeah. Okay. Another one, Brooke Tessmacher.
Very passionate.
Okay. Taylor Hendricks.
Tremendous potential.
Okay. I know we've been released, but of course when you got to work with him, Sam Shaw.
Very talented.
Okay. And the last one that I'm going to go for with today, I believe you worked, of course, the whole good check thing, Evilise. Now I know Evilise was only there, she did the good check thing, Evilise for less. Let's talk about Evilise. How was Evilise?
I think that, great future.
Okay.
She just came in, at a time, we only could only hire one at that time, and Lady Tapa just is such an attraction. She's so unique, so different, so exotic that was why she got hired, kind of why she got picked over to police.
Indeed. And another thing I also want to ask you also, with TNA Wrestling going forward, now I know they're going off the road, they're going back to the Impact Zone, I believe. What is your thoughts with TNA going forward, really, the progression, where TNA is going to be going into 2014?
I only hope up. I don't know. You're asking, and I do this with everybody because you're asking me to speculate.
Okay.
And I won't speculate in public. Cool. And too many people do that. They speculate and they offer their opinion on something they don't have any knowledge about. And to be quite honest with you, I have no clue. Okay. So for me to give some kind of insight or idea would be complete bollocks. I mean, it would be complete just me taking a guess, Yeah. And that's, and too many people do that these days. Too many people just take a guess based on their own assumptions and presumptions and are treated as if they actually know what they're talking about. And I have no idea. I'm not in a position to know. And, but I can only hope that it'll go up, that it'll just continue to improve and get better.
Fantastic. Now, okay, so let's talk about some of your acting roles. I know from recently, Man in Black. Let's talk about Man in Black, the Man in Black deal. Let's talk about that. How did this come about?
I just recently did a movie called Lake Erie. Okay. It's a horror film. Was very fortunate to be involved in it. The story is about a house that's kind of a dimensional doorway or haunted to, a place where the 7 deadly sins reside, and I get to play one of them called Wrath.
Okay.
I've also done a romantic comedy a couple weeks before that. I got to play a part in that. Did another horror film, a comedy slasher film, and a couple weeks before that. Supposed to be going to South America next week for another horror film called Where Evil Dwells. Just recently, Penny Dreadful Picture Show, yet another horror film, was just recently released here in the United States. Don't know if it's worldwide yet or not. Overtime, which I think you can still get on iTunes, is out there. It's kind of a comedy action horror flick. And Alice D, another horror film with Kane Hodder, who played Jason in Friday the 13th. That one will be being released here very soon. Money Shot, it's on Netflix. You can get that. It's a comedy. And I'm about to go do a sci-fi film in December in Connecticut. Excellent. So I've been very fortunate and very lucky. I'm trying to build another career to, that I enjoy as much as I do wrestling. But I mean, I can't imagine enjoying anything more than what I did with the wrestling business. I've been very blessed to get to do what I love to do for as long as I've loved to do it. I've been on vacation for almost 32 years. I've never had to work a day in my life.
I think that's a nice thing right there, a humbling thing. You've been able to do what you love. You've been able to do something you're passionate about, and that's a very humbling thing. You're living the dream. You're living your hobby, and I think the best jobs, if it's a hobby and you're into it, you're made.
Yeah. But the one thing I never did was I never treated it as a hobby. I always treated it as a job, as a profession. And too many young guys get into it, and they don't apply themselves and treat it as a hobby, and expect that they're going to eventually be able to do it as a profession. It just doesn't work that way.
Sure. Now then, as I say, we're going to start wrapping this interview up now. What do I say? Have you got any like final projects? Any final things you want to plug today?
I just, I'm going to continue to do the acting thing, and I would hope that everybody out there would help support me, because the movies are no different than wrestling. Yeah. Everybody thinks it's all about the acting and things like that, but Arnold Schwarzenegger gets to make tons and tons of movies, and the reason he does is not because he's a great actor; it's because he sells tickets. People pay to see him in movies, and if you see me and you see that I'm in a movie, please, help support it, and that'll help continue to give me opportunities to do it. So, and if anybody wants, they can follow me on Twitter at the Real Al Snow. Yes, there were fake Al Snows, which I informed all of them that they should aim the bar higher if they were going to be a fake celebrity. Don't shoot for me. And you can follow me on Facebook at Al Snow also.
We'll definitely put all of the links to Mr. Al Snow's, where you can connect with him through social media, aka Twitter, Facebook, and of course, like I say, I just want to say, I wish you all the best with your film and acting career. I hope that you carry on doing what you want to do. Of course, you carry on in the wrestling business, but making that transition across to the film business, I wish you all the best. I really do. And I say one more thing. I just want to say I very much love this interview. I say I very much thank you so much for taking the time out of your day for coming on. I've really enjoyed. I've learned a lot from you today in terms of the wrestling business. Things that I would, at one point looked at and been like, yeah. And then the way you just described it's like, you know what? I can see where you're coming from. You know what I'm saying? It's like you say it how it is, and I think that's a great thing. But like I say, that is that. Now, that is pretty much it. My name is Ollie Harper. You have been watching the Gorilla Report. We will see you some point in the new year. I want to say I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. Al, do you want to wish the viewers the same?
I wish all of you a very, very Merry Christmas, and I hope nothing but health, wealth, and happiness for the new year for all of you.
There you go. We will see you very, very soon in 2014. Take care, guys.